Hey everyone, it's Sean in St. Louis, and welcome back to the Marketing Gateway. Today, we have part 2 of our interview with Burl Stamp. Burl is, he's from Stamp & Chase, which is a St. Louis-based firm that offers performance improvement services by partnering with organizations to focus on engagement and development of their people, which is a great thing. And he does really good work. But he's also written this book, and it's called Becoming a Better Boss. And we talked about it in the first episode. We're going to talk about it more in this episode. And the reason that I'm so excited about this book is not just because it's a good book. It is a good book. You should read it. Everybody can stand to learn how to be a better boss, myself included. But one of the things that we talk about in this episode is how he got the word out about this book and how he has managed to make it successful and what he's doing to continue to work towards that goal. And it's not easy. When you're starting from the position of being a new author, even if you have a base of people that can help you out, which he does, and he talks about how he has used that, you still have a lot of work to do to get yourself to the point where you're visible and you can get on those bestseller lists, or you can make sure that people are talking about what you have to say. And so it's a marketing problem. And we also talk a lot in this episode about the importance of people. People really drive experiences. They drive what businesses stand for, what they're known for. And, you know, when we abandon people in favor of technology, we lose something. It's kind of like if you write a book with AI and it's obviously not written by you, who wants to read it? What's the value of it? But if you write a book that's personal, like Burl did, where it's talking about not just the evidence and the knowledge that you have found through your own research, but also your own personal experiences and what you've encountered and what you've learned from, there's so much more meaning in that. So you're going to enjoy part 2 of this interview with Burl Stamp. Here we go. Well, I hear that this book that you've written is a big success already. And I know that you had a pretty deliberate marketing strategy behind that, which, you know, it's not an accident. It's a great book, but it's not an accident.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your strategy for making sure that once you got this book out, that it hit the ground running once you launched.
Yep. So this is another, moving from large organizations to my own firm, this marketing a book, whole new set of, and I give a lot of credit to my publisher. One of the smart things I did, I spent a fair amount of time looking for a publisher. And Ripples Media in Atlanta, Georgia has been terrific. They have helped kind of guide me in the right direction. And one of the most important things is to, clearly you've got to get the word out, like in any marketing, as wide as you can. But the first thing you got to do is get the word out with your network. You've got to let people know you wrote this book. And one of the head of marketing, Nicole at Ripples, has said, don't be too apologetic. I mean, people actually, most of the people, will be excited that you wrote this book. And you need to be really clear about them. You need to tell them that, not only I'd love it if you buy the book, but I'd really love it if you'd write a review. So I learned that one of the important thresholds, marketing thresholds, the Amazon algorithm, if you hit 50 reviews, it rewards you. And interestingly, Amazon's pretty careful. I also learned that they don't accept, they vet to some degree. They don't accept every review. They want to make sure that somebody isn't like spamming the review so they get 1,000. Thinking about how I reached out to people, I developed a list of 342 of my closest and dearest friends, and I sent, and by the way, I sent the first email that I sent out to tell them about the book. Only 27 of those bounced back. I thought that was pretty good. I thought my quote, I'm old school. I'm using Rolodex. My contact list wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Letting them know. I also sent everyone. The publisher, by the way, didn't recommend this, but I said, no, I want to send everybody an advanced copy. Now, this is just a PDF of, the advanced read copy, but I appreciate, and I want people to, even if they don't buy the book, I'd like for them to see the book. And so that's where we are today. So that now we are, I'm continuing to work that list, frankly. It takes more than one email. It's a little more challenging to get to 50 than I thought it was going to be. And I think about that. I mean, we're all incredibly busy. It takes some time and effort to sit down and write a review. And I get that. So I'm incredibly grateful when people do. So we got some work to do there. But the other thing I'm doing is really beginning to think about one of the things I actually love most is I love public speaking. And I know I'm in the minority. I was at an event last week and the keynote speaker was talking about things that people fear most. And he said, public speaking is at the top of the list. It's ahead of death and dying. people fear public speaking more than death and dying. So I've got the good fortune, and part of it's just, coming up through when I was at the Children's Hospital in Phoenix and the CEO, I was number one fundraiser. I was out there all the time talking about, so I've had a lot of practice. And so I'm looking for opportunities to speak in front of groups. This is part of my early pitch here, Sean. Speak in front of groups more often. And there's this kind of flywheel thing. So, when you speak in front of groups more, there's a chance oh, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I want to buy his book, and you buy more books. And so it all sort of works together. So that's another huge thing. And then I've really, from my audience, the LinkedIn is by far the most important social media platform. I got to think about venturing outside of LinkedIn a little bit, maybe, but initially it will be LinkedIn. So that's generally the plan, and then that ties into the book to some degree, because I started as a writer. So writing the book for me is personally bucket filling. It feels good. But in terms of the business, it's a bit of a means to an end. So, the more the book can help land public speaking is one of my best lead gen strategies for the work I do with healthcare organizations. So hopefully this all works together. This media mix works together.
It's, I think part of the trick to book marketing is you have to have enough people that are initially supporting what you're doing to be able to get to that next level. And, I worked in, you might not know this about me, but I worked in comics back in my 20s. We sold comic books and go to conventions.
That's your surprise. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And we learned pretty quickly, because the comics we did were based on existing authors. We adapted the fantasy novels into comic books. Cool. And one of the guys we worked with was George R.R. Martin, who wrote Game of Thrones. He wasn't as big a name then as he is now, but one of the things that we learned was we had to go and engage people early and let them know it was coming if they were already interested, so that they would support it, and then other people would see that they were interested, and they wouldn't necessarily know why or how they were connected to it. They would just see, oh, okay, well, this person I likes it, so I'm going to like it too. That's the heart of these kind of grassroots marketing approaches. Yeah. And I think a lot of publishers out there will tell you that, you can buy your way onto the New York Times seller list. And that is kind of it's one of those things that if you work in the publishing world, that you buy your way into that. You don't just get on that automatically.
That does not happen by accident.
Right. But if you have people that are supporting your book, then you could get there naturally over time. You just have to have that groundswell support. And so you're doing the right thing, the way you're doing it. And
I hope so. And the other piece that I laugh with my publisher about, I've always liked to think big, and I realize I may not get there, but that would be nice to be a New York Times bestselling author. And you're right. It's extremely, it takes huge effort, lots of money, but it also takes a unique message. And I think maybe the marketer in me, when I talk to people, when we had a conversation about this, Sean, and your wife, bad bosses are a highly emotional topic for people. And if I can build on that, there's actually, I think, a fairly large number of people out there that said, yep, that's right. I've had a bad boss, and it wasn't, let me tell you about it. What the ultimate goal of the book is to help people realize, and this is probably a good time to clarify. Um, Bad bosses in 95% of the cases are not bad people. We have this warped view that bad bosses are like, the character on the movie 9 to 5 or Burns on Sipton, that they're mean, vicious, that they're underhanded, that they're crooked. That's not the majority of bad bosses. The majority of bad bosses, and you already mentioned this earlier, I mentioned in the book, are Michael Scott. Yeah. Michael Scott is a terrible boss, but Michael Scott actually does want the best generally for his employees. He wants people, in fact, that's part of it. Part of his problem is he wants to be everybody's friend a little bit too much, and he does weird things and he says crazy things, and it's exaggerated somewhat because it's a sitcom. But Michael Scott is an interesting kind of frame for what bosses that aren't as effective kind of look like. And I have this, the first line in my book is no one's ever really ready to become a boss for the first time. And so early on, we've got to figure out some way or another that we were a great individual performer. We did really great work, huge contributions. Somebody noticed. And when somebody notices, what's their response to that? Oh, we'll promote them. And now we'll have all these people, these other human beings reporting to them. And the reality is that the work, not only is the work different, in some ways, what made us a great individual star performer are characteristics that make us a terrible boss. Because we've worked really, really hard. It's frankly all about us. It's about how do I improve? How do I get better? How do I work harder? How can I be smarter? How can I be more innovative? How can I? And then it changes to we. So making that transition at some point early in being a boss, you've got to have that kind of moment, and I describe it in the book, my moment, where you figure out, wow, maybe I'm not as good a boss as I thought. I think organizations in a respectful way can and should help people get to that realization earlier. And most of the people I talk to in large organizations, conceptually, intellectually, they get that. They know that. They're just, for a number of reasons, are not there yet in most organizations.
And I was just thinking, you mentioned Michael Scott. I want to go back to him for a minute. So there's another show that those creators did. It's called Parks and Recreation, and came on a few years after The Office. Yep. And in that show, it's another workplace comedy, but the boss there, Ron Swanson, he's this kind of gruff Indiana guy who he doesn't really seem like he's a great boss. And yet, if you look at some of the things you're talking about in the book, he actually is a pretty good boss because he listens to people, he empowers them, he mentors them, he protects them from a lot of the things that are above him that he knows are going to get them. And he kind of creates this bubble where he seems incompetent and he seems like he doesn't care. And yet the people under him are thriving and working towards goals because he's making sure that they have that environment. I was just thinking, man, he's actually a really good boss.
That's a really good example. And, I didn't use it in the book because I
the second edition. Yeah.
I didn't watch Parks and Recreation as much as I watched The Office. Sometimes I watch it. It's a darn funny show. But it's, to your point, one, bosses come in a whole lot of different sizes, shapes, personalities, but there's a consistent set of evidence-based, research-based practices that we know make a difference in terms of engaging staff and helping them be at their best. Now, that's the third half of the book, or the back third of the book is focused on those more specific. But how we help leaders with those and how we help them with them earlier in their careers, I think is really important.
So true. And the back part of the book is your team framework, which can you review the team framework for us?
Yep. So team, by the way, these are all evidence-based practices that have been proven by organizations like Gallup and major academic organizations. We didn't just make this stuff up. However, we do practice what we preach. So we practice these things in the trenches. So they're kind of field tested. Team, the acronym TEAM stands for teach, empower, align, and mentor. And we think it's the four major areas that are critical, that great managers, leaders, bosses are great teachers. And by the way, great teachers are great learners. So there's like this bilateral kind of thing going on. They give staff voice, that's empower. By the way, voice and control is one of the other 6 root causes of burnout that Dr. Maslick talks about. So if you don't have any voice, if you don't have any control, hard to be at your best. Align is about how we set goals, and we draw from research and publishing from the 4 disciplines of execution. Most organizations set great lagging goals and don't think much about the leading goals that they share with staff to help staff understand kind of how I get my arms around this and how do I make a difference in this and how am I successful. And then the M, mentor, is how does a boss provide individual feedback. And the 2 key aspects of that are, 1, it needs to be consistent, more consistent than an annual performance appraisal, which, by the way, I think is the biggest waste of time in the organization and the most frustrating thing. And it needs to be balanced. It needs to be both positive and negative. And I've seen bosses that have fallen too far on both sides, but often we forget about the positive. We forget about telling people that they've done a great job and they've made a difference, and that we appreciate that. So those are the 4 major components, and then there are specific kind of tactics under each of those that we explain in the book.
It's fantastic. I actually was thinking I might print it out and put it up on my wall just as a reminder. I strive to be a good boss. I really do. And we have a small but mighty team at RPG and here at the Marketing Gateway. Yep. But at the same time, it's easy to get caught up in your own stuff. Last year was a rotten year, and I was really caught up in the feelings of the rotten year we were having. And I probably wasn't a great boss as a result of that. Yeah. But we can still apply that framework and try to say, well, I need to break out of this and remember that the people working for me are feeling bad too. And what can we do to get out of this?
It's hard. Yeah. Those tough years. I tell the stories that, when you're a great boss and you build a great relationship with your staff, it doesn't only go one way. You support them, but I've been there are examples of Troy can tell where the staff, when I was the CEO at Children's Hospital in Phoenix in particular, I leaned on them. They supported me, not in an inappropriate way, but they were there for me because I cared about them, and they knew that, and they cared about me as a person, as an individual, not just as a boss. So when this works, this isn't just about making things better for staff. This is about making things better for bosses, making their world and the work that they do even more gratifying and more meaningful and ultimately more successful.
I love that. I think that is a great reason to read this book. Well,
thank you.
Let me ask a couple more questions about marketing. So one of them is, what are the biggest challenges facing today's marketing teams and the next generation of marketing, communication, or Marcom professionals?
I'm going to be old school here. I think it's just staying really, really close to your customers. And there's an awfully lot of things that, get in the way, technology being one of them. And I don't mean to sound like, an old guy that doesn't get it. I get the impact of the advantages of technology, but I also know I'm going to pick on one of my pet peeves about early examples of AI, those darn chatbots. I've never talked to a chatbot that has made it more likely that I will be loyal to the company and I'm happier. I've talked to a hell of a lot of them that say, I'm never working with you again. Mm-hmm. I will never mail a package with UPS. I would crawl on my hands and knees to a FedEx office to avoid using UPS because of the experience I had with their chatbot and that they wouldn't let me get to a human being. So I think one of the biggest challenges is to use all the technology and leverage the technology, but not lose touch, contact with our customers, with our human being customers. I think that, it's important in every industry. It's particularly important in healthcare and the industry that I work in. And then, beyond that is just sorting through. I think there are a lot of I see the potential in AI. I also see the dangers in AI, and I think sorting through that and not losing. One of the people who read my book early, and Peppy Finn's endorsement is actually on the back cover. She said, "This is a well-timed book because in the age of AI, we cannot lose sight of the human side of business and what we're all doing." I think I haven't read it yet, but I think Pope Leo has something to say about that too. That just came out today. I mentioned that talks about humanity. So I think those are the things that we're up against as today's challenges.
Completely agree. And, somebody was telling me the other day, you mentioned Rolodexes earlier. They said, we really should get back to using Rolodexes because when you had one of those, you knew every single person in there and you wrote notes about them and you had a personal connection to them. And when you just put them in an email mailing list, you don't have that anymore. And I thought, there's some truth to that. There really is.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Well, what's one thing that you see many companies are getting wrong about marketing and effectively positioning their products and services?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to, I'm a broken record here. I think not staying close enough to the customers and not understanding, one of the things we did, I mentioned earlier at Purina, is track customer loyalty and track sales trends. And when things were trending in the wrong direction, we had early warning signals like, whoop, something is happening here. You can't do it for every single individual, but I am amazed at, because I talk about this sometimes when I do public speaking events and things, people hate chatbots. What? Why are companies noticing that? Why? And I get that it's less expensive, and I get that it's all that stuff. But I think staying close and actually understanding the however you're providing your service and the impact that it's having on the customer. I think for the marketer has got to be front and center in terms of leading the company in that understanding, and then what are we going to actually do about that.
One of the companies that's always at the top of customer service satisfaction rankings is USAA. I'm a USAA member. My parents were in the military, so I got a chance to be. You know what their promise is? I mean, and I just called them last week, so I know this is true. They always have a human being answer the phone. You might get through an automated system to get to that human being, but it's very short. And the reason they're at the top is because those people on the other end of the phone, they're still being given scripts through technology to help you with your problem. But they're empowered to actually help you, which is so different from a chatbot. And when I've seen organizations say, "Oh, we don't need to do that. We can offshore customer service, or we can delegate it to a chatbot, or we can use contractors to do that," it's almost always to their detriment.
Always, I agree,
because they're not empowered. They don't have the ability to actually help you.
And what happens with the chatbots? I did a webinar for a company on this years ago. That people don't think through that. If it's too hard to get to the human being, if you get too frustrated by the chatbot, think about what you're doing to your staff member that's on the phone. The person in your call center did not cause the problem, most likely, but people are raging mad when they get to them. So you're asking them to take on all that abuse, all of that. It's not good for your customers, and it's not good for your employees, for your staff. When you set them up to in a situation where their job's tough anyway. I think if the chatbot has pissed you off, it's even harder by the time you get to a human being.
There's nothing more aggravating than talking to a machine that is both validating you and also refusing to do anything for you. And
correct.
That's where chatbots are right now. So I agree. Well, I want to mention we're gonna talk about a plug here in just a second, but I want to mention the forward to your book was written by Maxine Clark, who was the founder of Build a Bear Workshop.
I am so honored and so humbled that Maxine Clark agreed to write the foreword. Not just because of Maxine's business career and her phenomenal, she's been successful in so many different ways, but because the impact, let's go back to an early subject, because the impact that Maxine is having on my hometown. Doing just amazing things in St. Louis with and I love the fact that, originally I had that she's had as her title or the description that she's founder of Build a Better Workshop, she said, I want you to put that I'm founder of Del Mar Divine as well, which I love. I shouldn't have thought that. So she's she is a force of nature. She has more energy and ideas and drive than anybody I've ever met.
Well, and I just thought, what a fitting way to talk about why people should read your book, because when you have someone like her, she's known for embodying many of the things we've talked about, and she was incredible. What was it that they called her at that Build-A-Bear, the chief?
Like chief bear officer.
Yeah,
chief, all their titles had bear in them.
Yeah, just having fun with the whole idea of the leadership structure. I mean, everybody I've ever known that's worked in that corporate structure loved working there and got a lot out of it. So, yet another reason to read your book. And where can people find your book?
You can find it at any major online retailer, certainly Amazon, but you can find it at Barnes & Noble. You can find it at Goodreads. You can find it, a couple of places that I'd never heard of when the publisher said that. So it should be reasonably easy to find. There are some titles similar, but we were talking about this earlier. I've been blessed with an odd name. So if you search on Burl Stamp, it'll show up.
Fantastic. And of course, we'll have a show note link to where you can find Becoming a Better Boss by Burl Stamp. Sure. And want you guys to check that out, and might be able to put it up here on the video too for the video viewers of the podcast. But I always ask guests if they have anything they want to plug. And there it is right there. And
there's my shameless plug. But the only other thing I'd plug, and I'm watching our time here, Sean. I feel I've had the good fortune of doing a lot of different things during my career. I feel as passionately about the work we're doing right now as anything I have ever done. We're at a point where not just for the good of frontline staff do we need better bosses, but for the good of the hardworking frontline managers whose jobs are more challenging than they have ever been. I've always thought, especially in healthcare, that the middle managers had the toughest job in the house. Well, now their job is like impossible. So we have got to do a better job of supporting them and making their role more fulfilling. That's the right thing to do but practically, here's what I hear from frontline staff. I watch my manager. I know what she does every day. I appreciate what she does every day. And if she leaves, you couldn't pay me enough to take her job. People are watching how we support our frontline managers, and it has a huge impact on the leadership pipeline and whether or not we're going to have people in line that are actually willing, whether you throw it at them or not, are willing to take those leadership roles and stay in them and support frontline staff in the way that they deserve to be supported.
Totally true. And you help consult with your company, Stamp & Chase, which you guys offer consulting for those that need to help with those kinds of problems. And is there anything else that you guys work with organizations on?
That's the coordinating. I will say one thing, and I don't mean to just about the semantics. We do consult, but we consulting sometimes carries some baggage.
Sure.
The way we describe our work is really in the performance management and improvement space. And I'm very quick to explain that the vast majority of performance improvement work over the last however many decades has been on the process side of things. We need as much focus and innovation on the people side of things as we've exerted on the process side of things. So that's what we're all about. We help through people make individuals more successful, and that we think is the path to making organizations more successful. The vast majority of our work is in healthcare, but people point out to me all the time, this sounds like work that could apply in other industries. So if there's anybody listening out there that has resonated with this message and you don't happen to be in healthcare, it works in any industry where you've got people working for people.
Fantastic. Burl, thank you so much for being on the Marketing Gateway. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Such a pleasure. I so appreciate it. Thank you. And It's this has been great to reconnect with you, Sean, and spend this time with you talking about topics I love.
Wow. As always, we have just the best guests on the Marketing Gateway. And Burl Stamp, you are one of the all-timers. Definitely somebody I enjoyed having on because you have so many awesome things to share. So thank you for being on the show. And as a reminder, Becoming a Better Boss by Burl Stamp, you can find it on Amazon. You should buy it. You should read it. It's not that much money. I think it's on sale right now, in fact. And you can get it through other booksellers as well, but definitely check it out. It is a great book, and I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed hearing more about it. And guess what? I enjoyed learning more about how to potentially market a book, because I may have a manuscript or two in publication myself right now that I'm getting ready to kind of push out into the world. So we'll see if I can learn from some of these lessons. But I also want to emphasize what Burl had to say about taking care of people. It's so important. And being a better boss is not just about looking for ways that we can make ourselves better, but it's also about how we can be better for a team. And, if you work in marketing, if you work in sales, if you work in PR, if you work in any of the roles related to what we do in the space of marketing, learning how to function with a team is so important. I learned that lesson when I worked at McDonald's. McDonald's, you can't do it all yourself. You could try, but you won't do it successfully because there's so many things that have to be done. So I had to learn as a manager there how to empower people to be in their roles and to do the best job they could so that we could all work together. And when we were humming along, it was great. When we weren't doing our best work because, quite honestly, because I wasn't managing the restaurant properly, I had to learn how to overcome that. And part of the reason that I was able to win awards and be good at what I did was because I embraced the idea that, hey, everybody here on this team has value, and my job needs to be to make sure that they are doing the best possible job they can do. And I'm not going to take the credit for it. I'm just going to be there overseeing it. We're all going to take the credit. And that's something that he talks about in this book as well, from his point of view. And you're going to see a lot of that when you get a chance to read it. So read it. It is a really good book. I want to mention as well, go to themarketinggateway.com. You can find interviews with all of our past guests. And if you want to be a guest, please sign up, because I love getting a chance to talk to people about what they're doing, how they're using these marketing skill sets to benefit the people that they know, and also the awesome expertise that we have here in St. Louis that our marketing mentors are able to share. So if you are interested, or if you know someone that's interested, have them sign up. We'd love to have them on the show. Thanks so much, Burl. We enjoyed having you. I'm Sean in St. Louis. This has been the Marketing Gateway, and we will see you next time.